Tes tes.
Hi, welcome to international webinar. All right. Hi, welcome to international webinar. We apologize to everyone that has been waiting for us because there are certain technical issues. And thank you so much for joining the webinar today. So today we are going to have a webinar with the title Borneo Under Threat. And I would like to say good evening for everyone that coming from Indonesia for Jakarta time, and also good morning to those who joining us from US, and I think it's afternoon for those who join us from Germany. And for your information, tonight we have 81 people join us in Zoom from 8 different countries, which are from Indonesia, US, UK, Spain, Germany, Peru, Australia, and from India. And I've seen here like more people coming, and I think not only 81 people, but we have more people come with the last minute link, because we really expect for more people to come and join us tonight. And yeah, so I believe that everyone is excited for this webinar. And I would like to introduce our speakers for today. So right now, I'm in the studio with 2 amazing speakers. I would like to introduce them. Right now with me, Sumarni Laman. Hello. Yeah. Sumarni, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for welcoming me.
I have seen. Okay, can you hear me, Randy? I think the audience cannot hear us today.
Check check. Can everybody hear my voice?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Can you send a message in the chat box if you can hear my voice?
Bentar, apa namanya?
Okay, cool. Can everybody hear Sinta's voice?
Yes. Okay. Okay, so I will start from the very beginning. I think that's okay. Like I really want the conversations tonight. It's more casual and not really like as a pressure for us, because of course the topic that we are going to talk tonight also already pressure.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would like to thank everyone for joining the webinar tonight in Jakarta time. But right now we have about 81 people joining us from 8 different countries, which are Indonesia, US, UK, Spain, Germany, and we also have some friends from Peru, Australia, and even India. So thank you so much for joining us. And as you already read in the invitation, and maybe you saw somewhere in the posters, that the title of the webinar today is Borneo Under Threat. So it's kind of scary though. And it's been a while also for me, like to talk about this issue, because during this pandemic, like for me personally, I took a lot of time to retreat and reflect on my activity as an activist. But somehow I found that it's challenging, because while we want to take a rest, problems keep occurring. And just like what's happening right now with the Kalimantan, the new hot topic, food estate in Central Kalimantan. And this is the topic that we are going to talk and dig deeper today with our speakers. I would like to introduce our speakers for tonight. So as you can see here, there are two amazing women with me in the studio, and I'm really happy to be able to sit with them tonight because I know even the topic itself is quite, like I say, scary for us as an indigenous people of Kalimantan. But yeah, we are here today, and thank you for Ibu Mardiana. She's coming all the way from East Barito, about 6 to 8 hours driving to arrive in Palangkaraya to be able to join us today. So Mardiana is an indigenous Dayak woman who has been fighting for the rights of indigenous people for over 3 decades. And she has a lot of experience underground and a lot of meaningful stories as well. And I really admire her as my example, as someone that I look up to, that keeps standing underground even though there is a lot of threats and pressures around. So thank you, Ibu Mardiana, for being with us today. And I would like to introduce our next speaker, Sumarni Laman.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sumarni Laman, and I'm coordinator of Youth Act Kalimantan. So maybe I can just share some photos so
Sure.
you can know that what we do in Youth Act Kalimantan. Kadita, please share some of the photo. So Youth Act Kalimantan is an organization, not organization. We always like to call it a movement because we want it to be a calling for youth to take part as a solutions for a problem, especially environmental problem and social issue that we are facing in Kalimantan. Maybe you know that in last year's 2019 we experienced one of the worst forest fires. Actually, forest fire happens every single years during the dry seasons, but last year was one of the worst after 2015. So yeah. Can you share another photo? Yeah. Not that one.
Okay, can you talk about this
Yeah,
photo?
so you can see I'm drinking a tea there, but you can see that the backgrounds, actually we are there having our lunch in the middle of haze because we are at the time fighting back the fire. This was one of the scary moment of my life, but also one of the funny because I never imagined like 22 years old me in the middle of the haze and fire having lunch with my friends. That was one of the heartbreaking story because not only we were fighting the fire, but also we distribute marks. We went to the villagers that very far away from from the capital city to giving marks because like surgical marks that at the time only 1,000 rupiah in Palangkaraya, but in the villages it could 10,000 rupiah, and sometimes it's hard to get that, and then it's not a proper marks for haze because you need to use N95. So we went into the village, we talked with the villagers, we talked about that what they are facing, the issue, and also the forest fire, how forest fire affect their life. Not only we do the haze and forest and fire relief effort, but also we demand the justice for Kalimantan. We're standing because like I'm 23 years old, and then I all my life experienced forest fire, so it is my right to get the fresh air, but I don't get it.
Right. I think before this started, I asked you about what year that you're born.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
I was I was born in 1996.
96, right?
So forest fire started in 1997. So you know, like 23, 99%, 90% of my life I experience how it feel in the haze seasons.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And and it's quite traumatic, right? I mean, like you never imagine that actually it's something that not supposed to be happen
Yeah.
in Kalimantan, and this is exactly what we are going to talk, because when we talk about the food estate project, so it related tightly with what happened in 1997. So we are going back to look at what's happening when this MRP mega rice project being established in Central Kalimantan, and it's the start point of the dryness and damage of the peat, and also the forest fires and toxic haze. Yeah, thank you, Sumarni,
Yeah.
for your introduction. I feel like your passion to really tell people about what's happening here, and I will just introduce the next speaker. Um, I will read the bio first. Randy Julian Miranda is an avid environmentalist and community development practitioner with extensive experience in project management, conservation, sustainable business, research, and communication. He obtained his master's degree in environment and development study at the University of Melbourne, Australia in 2018. His research focused on political economy, indigenous people, and gender issues within the development sphere. Randy, thank you so much for joining us in the webinar today. Um, would you like to share us about your works and also your perspective about this food estate project that has become a hot issue right now?
Hi everybody, thanks Sinta for the introduction. Maybe before I share a little bit of the background of the issue that we're dealing with at the moment in Central Kalimantan, Indonesia and Borneo, I would like to briefly share with you about my work with indigenous communities, especially indigenous women in a number of villages across Central Kalimantan. So I'm leading a social enterprise that we called Handep. We work to empower indigenous communities through sustainable fashions and agricultural products. So basically, we try to support our people through a more sustainable livelihood alternatives. And also, we talk a lot about land conflicts between corporations and indigenous people that we are working together with over the last couple of years. Sintam, should I just put on the screen my short presentation about the food estate? I am not sure how familiar is everybody, the audience tonight, with the issue of food estate in Kalimantan, and maybe briefly before we touch on this, can everybody see my screen? Before we touch on this, I would like to briefly share about what happened back in the New Order under Suharto's regime, just very briefly to give a little bit of background to people who are probably are not yet familiar with this. So in 1995, the New Order government decided to develop 1 million hectares of Central Kalimantan's peatlands into rice fields with the narrative of economic development and food security. However, without adequate environmental, social, and also technical studies, only within 2 years, the project has caused a lot of damages, including digging 187 kilometers of canal connecting three major rivers in Central Kalimantan, including Kahayan, Kapuas, and Barito rivers, and 1,129 kilometers of primary canals, and 964 kilometers of secondary canal, and 900 kilometers of tertiary canal. I don't want to go too much into those details, but basically, a huge amount of pristine forest and peatland, including the wildlife inside the peatlands habitat, had been cleared, and the drained peatland, as of today, continuously, uh, undergoes oxidations, hydrophobications, compactions, and subsidence that leads to the new normal. If my friend Alma tonight, who is also part of the panelists, would call it, we call it the new normal. Uh, for fires in the dry season and then flooding in the wet season. Okay, so what is currently going on in Indonesia? The current government is planning to embark on a similar project with an arguably a little bit smaller scale of food estate. Can you guys see my screen? Okay, cool. So what is the narrative behind this new food estate project or mega rice project? Some other people like to call it. With the COVID-19 outbreak, President Jokowi Dodo administration is already putting in place a plan to embark on a new food estate project that would clear potentially up to 900,000 hectares of peatland in Central Kalimantan and convert them into giant rice fields and other types of crops. However, the data is still arguable as of today because the government keeps showing inconsistency about the size of the area that they are going to develop for this project. But the questions that we raise to the government regarding this project is their inconsistency. There is a discrepancy of information because in the first month after COVID-19 got into Indonesia, the government didn't talk about food prices. They even made a contradictory statement that our food security is still in a good shape, which means the availability of food stock is twice as much as the level of national consumptions. Which, uh, if we talk about food availability, it's supposed to be available for about 2 quarters. But just less than 2 weeks before making that statement, uh, the government all of a sudden came up with a new narrative of food crisis happening in Indonesia. However, from other sources that I also have the data actually to support this argument, this project has been planned by the provincial government since a few years ago, uh, which can be clearly seen from the 2017 proposal to the national government. What are some of the major problems with this food estate? First of all, there is no adequate impact assessment. Ecologically, socially, economically, there has not been any publicly accessible results of impact assessment that show the feasibility of this project if supposed to be taking place on peatlands. Second of all, the program or project is also done in a very top-down approach, and there is no free, prior, and informed consent, or FPIC, I would call it, from the local communities living within and around the project sites. In addition to that, we also see that there is a tendency of recentralization of land control, where public resources such as lands and forests are used to benefit the interests of the elite corporations and the political elites, as well as high-level government officials in Indonesia. We can already see from the very top-down approach that there is no consultation with the local people. that there is no involvement of the village officials regarding the project implementations, let alone the implementations. Even now at the stage of planning, a lot of village leaders are actually not aware of this new plan. Another layer to this issue is that there is no transparency. Information on the plan is not publicly accessible, and the government keeps changing their statement on the data, especially on the size of the lands that they're going to use for this project. Even as of today, we haven't got a final map or of locations where this project is going to take place. The concern from the activists and environmentalists and also academics in Central Kalimantan and Indonesia generally regarding this is that there could be potential overlap with the conservation peatlands that's supposed to be left submerged or wet in order to avoid forest fires and other ecological disasters. And last but not least is Indonesia's commitment to Paris Agreement is actually a big question because Indonesia has committed to reducing emissions by 29% by 2030 and up to 41% with international support. So with these projects taking place, which is already which we can already see so because there are already some activities happening on the ground without consent from the local people and without any process of deliberations. So why actually a lot of people in Central Kalimantan especially go against this project or refuse this project? Because we have learned a lot from the 1 million hectares megarized project during Suharto's regime. First and foremost is ecological destructions, which we have been experiencing over the last 2 decades. We have got these frequent peat and forest fires and also flooding in the rainy season. It also has contributed to a vast amount of carbon emissions. Even back in 2015, Indonesia's level of emissions from the peat fires was actually surpassing the emissions of US economy, annual US economy carbon emission. The ecological destruction is also related to loss of biodiversity, including exotic animals like orangutan and other valuable biodiversity on the peatland ecosystem. Second of all, the ex-megarized project also, the past megarized project also has led to socio-economic issues, including land grabbing and appropriation, where local communities are being affected due to the complex land tenure system in Indonesia, where the customary land ownership is not necessarily recognized by the state, although rhetorically and on the law and the regulation, the government actually recognize it, but on the ground, it is the other way around, where a lot of land of indigenous and local people or traditional communities are being acquired by big corporations in the name of economic development. Other than that, this project also has caused loss of local food systems or traditions. Yeah, it changed the way people interact with land. It changed the way people interact with nature, specifically in the way people grow food. This kind of project that has resulted in such a monumental ecological impacts has changed the not only the landscape of the ecosystem, but also the health of the ecosystem of peatlands, where people are no longer able to plant their food, such as fruits and vegetables and some other local types of woods that become very important aspect of their livelihoods. Also, another layer to this is inter-ethnic conflict between the locals and the transmigrants. So in the 1965 project, the government brought almost 16,000 transmigrants or people from the Java Island to be the farmers. but excluding the local people from the project because they are considered as backward and primitive and do not know how to deal with a modern agriculture. Also, this project is contributing to health issue, which you can see here, some of them. I'm not going to talk a lot about that because other speakers will also touch on the same angle. Okay, so for us as land right activists, I think it's really important to make sure that the project doesn't go ahead because Indonesia has a very weak tenurial security all over the country, especially in Kalimantan, where there are a lot of traditional and indigenous communities. And state-sponsored land development like this one, massive scale, has always posed threats to the rights, welfare, livelihoods, and identity of our people, the Dayak communities. I'm gonna finish my presentations by saying this. Land-based development has always been used to reinstate centralized governance because by powerful actors and restrict the devolution of power to local people. This means re-centralizing power and control over land through a very top-down approach. The status quo basically reflects the power abuse of state and private actors to retain control over the land and forest resources for their political and economic agenda, but masked beautifully with the populist rhetoric of empowerment, like Jokowi always echoing to the Indonesian citizens. Yeah, I think that's from my side.
And this is also something that we need to be skeptical. And I will raise these key questions later in the group conversations. But right now, I would like to introduce our next speaker, Ibu Alma. Ibu Alma, thank you so much for joining us with us. Ibu Alma
Hi.
was born and grew up in Palangkaraya. She obtained her master's degree in natural resource studies at the University of Queensland in 2001 and PhD in water resource quality at the University of Manchester in 2009. Her works involve environmental aspects of mining, forest and peatland, as well as children educations. Thank you so much, Ibu Alma, for joining with us.
No problem at all. It's my pleasure to join you all tonight or whatever time you have now. Thank you everyone for coming to this Zoom meeting. We're really happy that we can share what we are facing now.
Yeah, that's true. And for me, it's quite fascinating as well and excited because all the speakers today are the Dayaks. It's not by accident, right? So we are not talking about what's happening in somewhere else and about anything else, but it's about us, like, so if we bring our audience today more insights about Kalimantan and about all the controversies around this food estate. So, Ibu Alma, would you like to share to us your perspective about this?
Yes, I think this is a very important issue for us to discuss globally because it's not only the local people that facing this kind of situation, but actually the whole planet is facing the situation because it's the effect is not only will be experienced by the local but also by everyone on this planet. So if I can share my presentation, let me just open the okay. Can everyone see?
Yep, we can see that clearly.
Okay, so Actually, I was last minute preparation for this because it's just yesterday I was asked to present this. So let's just start. I just put the title Kuopadis, Peatland in Central Kalimantan. Um, so Peatland in Central Kalimantan has experienced a lot of disturbance in the last 23 years. And we can see it's starting from the, as Randy already mentioned, in 1995. So this is the one of the area that has the peatland. So I just started with the how the peatland formation is. Maybe some of you um, know a lot about peatland, and maybe some not really know a lot about that. So I just try to cover a little bit of the science behind the peat formation, the tropical peat formation. It took 900 to 1600 years to reach a 4-meter height, and then it only takes 100 years uh, to lower it for 4 meters because of the subsidence rate due to the drainage. So you can see how it was formed. When there is the Oxbow Lake layer by materials, the dead materials, and then it built up to become the pit dome. But it took like 1600 years to reach 4 meter, and many peatland in Central Kalimantan can reach like 10 meter, 20 meter or more. So you can imagine how they work for many years. Try to move. Okay. The history of 1 million hectare mega rice project, I will do it quickly because Randy already covered this. It converts to 1.4 million hectares of Central Kalimantan peat forest to become mega rice fields, but without going through adequate environmental, social, and 187 kilometers of two main canals that connecting three major rivers, Kahayan, Kapuas, and Barito, and then 1,129 kilometers primary canals, and 964 kilometers secondary canals, and then 900, and then 1,500 kilometers smaller canals, which all resulted in the peat drainage and damage of the peatland. These canals were supposed to irrigate the rice fields, but instead they became the massive drainage for the water to come out of the pit dome. And only later did it realize that we realized that the area was in the form of pit domes. So of course this will um, drain the pit domes for in the last 23 years, and then we can see getting damage. And at the time as well, in just within 2 years, 15,500 transmigrants were brought in to become farmers in the mega rice project area. And after it stopped, these transmigrants, many of them left the area. We can see this is the map of the mega rice projects. Is distributed into 5 blocks: block A, B, C, D, and E. So this the area that cover 3 regencies: Barito, Selatan, Kapuas, Pisau, and then municipality Palangkaraya. We can see in this picture is the two main canals, 187 kilometer that's supposed to irrigate the rice field from the main river, but instead it drained the giant pit domes that leading to the massive damage of the peatland, cutting through the pit domes. You can see this is the smaller canals, and yeah, The impact of the peatland drainage, Randy already mentioned before. It can make the peat experience oxidation, which emit a lot of carbon emission. Then the composition, dispersion of the peat materials. Then they can experience compaction because of the loss of the water, and then subsidence and hydrophobization, and the release of the toxicity to the surrounding water and soil because of the release of the acidity and the aluminium and the iron to the surrounding. This will lead to high level groundwater level fluctuations, so that it will be very prone to the flooding during the rainy season and fire during the dry seasons. As we know, plants store enormous amounts of carbon for thousands of years, doing its job very well, making the planet working for everyone, for us to live for many years, because it can be up to 20 times more carbon than stored by the forest. Peatlands store, yeah, this is repetitions. Draining the peat and the peat fires release a large amount of carbon along with the fine particles and toxic chemicals that are inhaled by the community and also can spread to the other countries as well. The carbon emission from 1 hectare of peatland is between 5 to 15 tons of carbon dioxide equivalents per year. So if the peatland is damaged, it can release equal amount of total carbon emission up to 7 cars per year. In how big it is, and in 2015, on 200,000 hectares of peatland were burned in Indonesia. It released about 1 million tons of carbon into the air, which contributed to the global warming of our planet. So peat damage causes global warming and the loss of habitat, biodiversity, and the livelihoods for the local communities. That's how damaging is the destruction of the peatland to the life to everyone actually. See, I just want to show you the picture of the forest fire in the national park, the Sebangan National Park. It's very near to the river, but this very big fire happened at the time. And this is the transportation in the air in the Mantang River in 2015. It was a very, very thick haze we experienced at the time. On the 24th of October 2015, Palangkaraya has covered by haze that was like 10 times the dangerous level, the PM10. I just show it quickly. So the government did a lot of things to try to rehabilitate the damaged peatland and try to protect the remaining peatland. This is a lot of policy and regulation. But 13 years in the presidential instruction, the rehabilitation of the ex-Mega Rise project, and 23 years since it began, there's still much to be done to achieve the rehabilitation target in the area and prevent the fires and more damage to the pit as well as improving the welfare of the people in the region. I just want to show you, this is the master plan they already made by the government together with the Netherlands government. This is the area. You can see they divide the area into protection zone, the green one, and the orange ones is the limited development zone or the buffer zone. And what color is this? The cream one is development zone. So in the cream color, this is where actually the development zone allowed. Yeah, This is just the detail of the area. Yeah, I just show you the depth of the pit that was studied in the master plan. The red one is more than 3 meters depth. So the green one, the area where it's low, is the buffer zone, and then the mineral soil is less than half meter, is in the pink color. You can see in the middle of the mineral soil, there's still pit uh, pit uh, pit area that's up to 1 meter. I just want to show you there's also problem with the concession, palm oil concession in the area after the mega rice project was terminated. There's a lot of concession were given by the local government, so like dozens of them, and many of them was over the pit more than 3 meter depth. So I put the circle was over the pit land above 3 meter depth. Now in 2020, this year, there's new plan come up. It's new food estate plan. We can see it's very quick. The number, the area that's proposed, they are proposed were changing very quickly from 900,000 hectare, then become 300,000 hectare, and then become about 165,000 hectares. But we never know which one is the right one because we're still waiting. This is a visit of the President Joko Widodo to the area on the last week on the 9th of July. We can see this is the picture that put there to show the president about the ex-mega rice area, and there is a yeah, we can see the 5 block already. All the 5 block were put on the wall for the president to see. Actually, we have the socialization by the provincial government showing the area that going to be the food estate is 165,000 hectares. This is the area. I just compare it with the area that were outlined by the master plan in the master plan. So there are about 3 areas that's in the plan for the food estate are actually outside, I mean, not in the development zone, but part of the buffer zone and maybe a bit of the protected zone. And the coastal zone also part of the food estate, which is actually protected area as well, or limited development only. This is just a comparison with the palm oil concession. So in block D, there's overlap between the food estate and the palm oil concession, and maybe in the block A, there is also overlap here. Will be a problem because we know that they need, like paddy rice field, they need water higher than what the palm oil need. Still, there are many questions we not answer. So like the detailed plan, the type of species, fate of the restoration, local involvement due to lack of transparency, environmental, social, and technological assessment, and most importantly, public consultation and free informed consent from the local communities. And this is actually many questions remain unanswered. Sorry if I type it wrong. Uh, and what happened to the other food estate projects like in Merauke, Ketapang, and Bulungan, the previous project? Did they successful? That we can learn from them, what we can learn from them. And the question for us, everyone, is this fair for the locals and the peatland, nature, and the planet? Is this the right way forward for everyone? And can we do better together? So it's really a question for every one of us because if we save the peatland, we save the nature, and we save the humanity. This is a photo taken by my friend Muhammad Rohim. It shows you the Milky Way above there. We are just a little tiny planet among thousands, millions of uh, planets and stars in this universe. But we can do little thing that can really save the humanity together. Thank you. I think that's all from me.
Thank you, Ibu Alma, for your presentations. And I take notes on 4 points. Actually, all points are important. Like it's very informative for us, especially for those who never heard about MRP project, and also do not really know about food estate. Because when people hear about food estate, they will think, oh, that's a good project. Like it will be beneficial for the locals and for the countries. But yeah, I wrote these 4 points here that we will bring into deep discussion after this. Like you show the data about the particulate micro and carbon emissions that being released in 2015 forest fires. Like 2015 forest fires, it produced 1 million tons of carbon emissions, and then also the toxic airs being inhaled by the local communities. So I remember, like in 2015, the number of the PM10, the particulate micro, reached the number of over thousands, while actually in the particles, from the forest fires and pit fire, they release the particles that very very small, which is called PM 2.5. Its size is only 2.5 micros, and I remember at the time we recorded the data, and it showed the number of 1400s and 14,700s, and it's equivalent to smoke to 672 cigarettes a day. So could you imagine that this poisonous air being inhaled by baby, by elders? And that's what we experience from year to year. And I think Sumarni really can relate with this. As she mentioned, she has been exposed to the toxic haze since 1 year old, right?
Yeah.
Maybe later Sumarni can share more about this in our conversations. And the second point that I wrote here, it's just my own curiosity. I'm really curious why President chose the Minister Defense as the person in charge of this project, because it will, raise skeptical questions whether it involves the military power or not. I don't mean to point anything here, but it's just my own curiosity. And when I had these conversations with the locals, also they had the same curiosity. And Ibu Alma also talked about hydrology systems, where in the locations where the food estate will be established, there's a palm oil plantations. And these two things, rice and palm oil, they're really different in hydrology systems. So this is something also that we need to put highlight on that. And the last one, I wrote here the statement from Ibu Alma. Is this fair for the locals? Is this fair for indigenous communities? And this is something that I want to ask to Ibu Mardiana, as someone who has been fighting for the rights of Dayak community for over 3 decades. And before we started this webinar, I also had the conversations with her about what happened in the past, during the Soeharto regime. And she shared a lot of things that happened in her village, which I never knew, but it will give us insights about what's possible if we continue ahead with this project. So, Ibu Mardiana, would you like to share with us about your perspective about this food estate project, whether it is a fair thing for the indigenous communities, and do you think it is the right thing to bring the agrarian policy, or like the agricultural method that coming from outside Kalimantan and being implemented here in Kalimantan?
Ya, jadi ini Kak Sinta nanya apakah pendapat Ibu tentang proyek ini adil atau tidak untuk masyarakat adat. Terus juga sekarang ini kan proyek ini akan dipegang oleh Kementerian Pertahanan, dan apakah itu sesuai gitu. Dan juga ini proyek juga akan membawa metode pertanian dari luar Kalimantan di Kalimantan Tengah, dan apakah ini bisa diimplementasikan? Mungkin Ibu bisa cerita.
Menjawab itu aja.
Ya, tentang pendapat Ibu tentang proyek food estate.
Terima kasih, selamat malam. Nama saya Mardiana Dana. Saya perempuan adat Dayak dari Barito Timur. Saya sudah mengalami di masyarakat adat, dan apa yang saya sampaikan pada malam hari ini, apa yang kami rasakan, apa yang kami lihat, apa yang kami dengar, apa yang kami lakukan selama ini, itu yang saya sampaikan, dan saya akan menjawab pertanyaan dari Ibu Shinta.
Good night, thank you for the opportunity. My name is Ibu Mardiana Dana. I'm from East Barito, and I will share my experience, something that I feel, something that I see, and something that I hear. And I'm indigenous Dayak, and then this is what we're gonna share is something that we really experience in the ground.
Menyangkut proyek untuk Kalimantan Tengah ini, proyek pot estate ini yang hadir di Kalimantan Tengah ini sangat-sangat bertentangan dengan masyarakat adat, dengan kondisi masyarakat adat. Karena kami sudah merasakan selama dari masuknya perusahaan kayu, perkebunan kelapa sawit, pertambangan batu bara, kami sudah mengalami dari kerusakan alam bumi, hutan dan lingkungan. Itu sudah sangat merugikan dan bertentangan dengan kearifan lokal kami.
This food estate is not really fit in our community because we already experienced that when the timber company, palm oil company, and coal company comes to our community, it give ecological destructions in our lands, and then it's also destroy the life of indigenous people.
Kerugian bagi masyarakat adat dengan hadirnya pot estate ini, pertama mempersempitkan ruang gerak kami masyarakat adat. Kedua, mempersempitkan sumber kehidupan kami masyarakat adat, direnggut atau dirampas oleh pihak-pihak yang berkaitan dengan rencana pembangunan persawahan yang merampas hak hidup kami dengan ratusan ribu hektar, bahkan ribuan, jutaan ribu hektar.
The damage of the food estate brings many devastating effects for the community, especially it can kill and destroy the source of the income for thousands of the community.
And it's narrowing.
Yeah, it's
It's
narrowing the life.
the movement of the indigenous community and also the food sustainability for the indigenous community.
Dan dampaknya bukan hanya bagi kami masyarakat adat atau masyarakat secara umum, kaum petani maupun peladang, tetapi bagi makhluk hidup, tumbuhan, kemudian ekosistem, hewan-hewan yang biasa hidup di atas pohon dan makan buah-buahan hutan maupun dedaunan, itu juga sangat berefek bagi kehidupan kami semua.
Food estate not only bring devastating effect for the indigenous community, but it also cause ecological destructions, especially for the plants, animal, and ecosystem. Animal that used to live in the tree can feel the damage of this.
Dan dengan pembukaan lahan-lahan baru yang secara legal dan dikuasai dan dilakukan oleh militer, kami sudah merasakan tahun 93 desa Janah Jarih dan Karanglangit berdarah. Itu masa Orde Baru, kami tidak berdaya. Yang membuat saya menderita dan penyesalan seumur hidup mungkin bagi saya. Karena saya seorang perawat, ada seorang ibu yang sedang sakit, sudah lama sakit. Saya berusaha merawat, dijemput pakai sepeda ontel. Bahkan jalan kaki kadang-kadang kami di atas ontel dan ontel di bahu bapak yang menjemput saya, suami dari ibu saya. Dengan hitung detik beliau dicincang. Pada saat itulah sampai sekarang penyesalan yang paling mendalam bagi saya. Karena saat itu dipegang oleh Bapak Presiden Soeharto yang diserahkan kepada baju-baju biru. Dengan mereka lah yang menyetir traktor-traktor, membabat kebun masyarakat, membabat ladang masyarakat sehingga terjadi peristiwa berdarah tahun 93.
We already experience how it's feel when the militaries open the new lands in our territory. In 1993, at the time I was the nurse, and then the villagers comes to my home and ask me to come to their village because there are a woman who was killed and mutilated in their village, and then it was a horrible experience for me because when the military bring big machines to clean our lands, it also bring the war in our community.
Dan saya sangat kecewa. Kenapa ya kami masyarakat adat, kami kaum petani peladang bisa mengatasi kekurangan pangan kami sendiri. Sekarang kami menjadi dianggap kekurangan pangan karena kami tidak bisa beladang. Kami tidak bisa mengelola hutan kami sendiri. Kami dibatasi. Ruang gerak kami dibatasi. Untuk keabsahan tanah kami terbatas. Dan diintimidasi. Dengan persyaratan-persyaratan yang luar binasa. Menekan untuk menghambat kami membuat keabsahan tanah kami sendiri itu milik kami, diperjuangkan oleh leluhur dan nenek moyang kami dengan pertumpahan darah, keringat, dan air mata. Bukan diberi oleh negara, oleh pemerintah, tapi perjuangan. Pemerintahan ini karena persatuan dari komunitas, dari desa, dari masyarakat adat, dari seluruhnya. Melingkar menjadi satu, diikat supaya berdirinya negara ini. Tetapi kami sekarang kembali dijajah secara ekonomi oleh pemerintahan kami sendiri.
I'm very disappointed why Prabowo is chosen as the leader for this to lead this food estate project, because we, the local community, as a farmer, we can sustain ourselves. But however, we cannot open the land. We cannot farming because the regulation and make us cannot do that. It's also hard for us to legislate our lands because there is a many rule that cannot make us do that. We protect our land with blood and tears, but however now we lose our lands because of the colonization.
Thank you so much, Ibu Mariana, for sharing what is in your heart and let the people from all over the world know also about the struggles in the heart of the indigenous communities. And yeah, it's very emotional actually for me personally, because it's true, like what Ibu Mariana said, it's very hard for indigenous communities right now to gain the rights over their territory. Even we know the law of the indigenous rights has not been legalized yet, right? Has not been legislated yet. And we have been waiting for that for years. And that's why also in one point of the Kalimantan climate strike petitions also demand for the legislations, right? For government to legislate the law on the indigenous rights. We are going to have the Q&A sessions after this. If you have any question, you can send chat to the host personally, and we will just let you to ask the questions. But before that, I would like to ask Sumarni about the petitions that are being started by Kalimantan Climate Strike, because definitely it's not only about demanding the climate justice for Kalimantan, but also to demand for the rights of indigenous community, the Dayak indigenous community.
So we are in the Kalimantan climate strike, a movement to demand climate justice in Kalimantan. We ask three things. First is cancel the food estate in Kalimantan, and second, fulfill the law about mitigate forest fire in Indonesia, and the number third is immediately legislate the law about indigenous people.
So how is the youth response to this thing? You know, like it seems like some are still ignorant. Some like, hey, let's support the food estate project because it will build our nation to have a better future. You know, what do you think about that?
So we receive many different response from the young people, especially some of them argue that food estate can bring positive impact, especially now we are in the crisis, corona and something like that, and then many people are afraid that we don't have enough food for everyone, for feed the hungry planet. But however, at the same time, people who experience the fires and the haze for 23 years knows that what will happen after the project, because there are many similar projects with different names in Kalimantan, not only mega rice projects, but also in 2013 there is the government also did a similar projects in a feed area, but it was also not success. And then we, the young people, that they say the future generation in Kalimantan have to take all the responsibility we inhale the haze. And then so that's why many people also support us for these movements. Not only people who are now in Kalimantan, but they from another part of Indonesia and also the world, because fire and haze is not only the case of the problem of Kalimantan people, but also the world.
Right.
Yeah, because everyone say that Kalimantan is the lung of the world, and then now your lung is broken, your lung is suffering because of the haze and fire.
Right. I totally agree with what you said. What is the guarantee, right?
Mhm.
What is the guarantee that this project will not be the same failure, just like what happened in the past? And actually, not only the MRP project, but I have heard the stories also of other projects in different areas, like some in Katingan Regency, some in Barito Regency, where government established the sawah persawahan,
Yeah.
like wet rice farming, and it's a failure. So so that's why these questions keep coming from the communities and from the green movement, from the NGOs, because there's no guarantee. I mean, the percentage of the failure is really big there, and we're not only predicting, but we already experience the effect of the damage, right, of the peatland damage, of the forest fires. And yeah, right now I have checked into the release, the from so, civil society
Yeah.
coalitions. I'm sorry, I quite forgot. So there are more than 160 organizations and green movements and green leaders that already oppose this project. But somehow government say, because of these situations of the pandemic, this will definitely help the nations to survive with the food sustainability. So when we expose our positions, like, hey, we are against this food estate project, and some people from outside Kalimantan will say, we have no other choices because this is the best for this country. This is the best because maybe other countries will not sell their foods. There is no export or import anymore. So they argue that this is for the sake of the nation. I would like to hear the response and perspective from Randy and Ibu Alma about this.
I think I'll jump in to respond to your questions. I think the big questions that everybody needs to ask regarding this project is whether or not it will benefit the people, whether or not it's actually aimed at strengthening or recovering the food security of Indonesia as a nation. There are some aspects that we need to take into account when we talk about the purpose or the core goal of this project. We need to look at who is involved. This is a very critical question. Who is involved? It has been very clear from all the media reports and also journalists that the actors who are going to get involved in this project are not only the farmers that they are going to bring from Java, but also the state-owned companies and private companies on the justifications of the need for big capital. Yeah. So we can already clearly see that why the government doesn't focus on developing already existing food or agricultural sites in more than 15,000 villages across Indonesia. And there are actually around 600 villages in Indonesia that have a very strong agricultural system that can serve to strengthen or to serve for the food security of this country. Why doesn't the government look at that as a solution? Another layer to this is also why the government doesn't look at food diversifications instead of just focusing really much on rice. Yeah, there is a bias towards rice as a commodity because it is being traded. not only domestically but also internationally. But the sad truth about Indonesian rice is that, just so you guys know, in 2018, Indonesian government imported 2.2 million tons of rice from neighboring countries, including Thailand and Vietnam, because we don't have adequate rice to distribute to our own people. So instead of empowering those villages, those farmers, small scale farmers in a lot of villages, they focus on importing because the solution is such a shortcut, and it's also serving for the interest of people or businessmen who are involved in the export-import industry. This is a very clear capitalistic approach that doesn't care about the prosperity of the people, especially those who are less fortunate or in the bottom of the in the bottom margin of the economy. There is a very clear tendency of governments being uh, the servants or friends for big corporations. And second question we also need to look at is how this is going to be implemented. I have always been wondering since 2 months ago that this project, why this food estate project has to be centralized, yeah, in a very, very massive scale. Meanwhile, at a global level, we have been talking about transitioning to small scale and non-monoculture agriculture method. But Indonesian government seems to walk away from that agenda and try to focus on a very centralized agriculture system. This is also related to efficiency and profit margin. Uh, there is no space for the people. It only talks at the level of economic gain or profit gain. It doesn't talk about the rights of the people, the rights to their lands, the rights to healthy living environment, the rights to healthy air to breathe in. This is very devastating. Indonesian government really needs to evaluate this plan before it really happens. While we already know on the ground there are some activities already going on, right? I think those are my two responses about this. It is clear that it goes against the prosperity of the people, let alone the agenda of agrarian.
Before I go to Ibu Alma, I would like to throw one statement here so we can check this together. This statement comes from different resources actually. As some people mentions that government always mentions the different amounts of the areas, like the being made as a food estate locations. So they say only 165,000 hectares of peat XMRP that will be converted to rice field, not that 800,000 hectares. Ibu Alma, is it true or not?
It's not very clear at all. So there's so many numbers around that confusing the public. They put different numbers in just a matter of days. It's really big question for us because we know that Keklan is a very sensitive area, and it's need to be any development on this area need to be carefully planned and assessed. And that's what we lacking. There is no single assessment available for the public to scrutinize, and then even where it is located is not clear. Like the map that I show you, there are two different kinds of map. One is the socialization map from the socialization from the provincial government, Central Kalimantan, is only show 165,000 hectares, but the map that's shown to the President Joko Widodo is the whole 1.4 million hectares. So there is no single map available that we can rely on, and even the rapid environmental assessment that was carried out by, I think, had been carried out by the environmental ministerial, is still not available to the public, and the area and the location is still questionable. So I cannot really answer exactly where it is and how much it how many hectares it will be. So this is also indication that the planning is still lacking, because we know that if we fail to plan, we plan to fail. So
That's totally true.
yeah, because we know that it is very expensive to manage this fragile environment. The hydrological system is very expensive to maintain, and then even more expensive to restore once it's damaged. And then we know also that a big stretch of rice fields is very risky, because it's very prone for the attack from the insect and the pest that will make the whole rice harvest fail. So it is very risky project, I think.
Yeah, I totally
We
agree
want to really.
that this is a very risky project, and I just quote what Randy said. Who are the actors of this project? If it is the local base, like ground up, bottom up approach,
Yeah.
and then we can put our hope there as a locals, right? I mean, we are not the enemy of the government that we choose to stand against this project, but because we want to protect our people, we want to protect our home, Kalimantan. And so far, what we see here, the actors in this project are government, investors, and military. Why I say it like that? Because a few days ago, I saw the official release from the Divisi Humas Polri, or police, in the national level. There are 4 points, and the third point quite shocking for me, because it says that the police will have to guarantee the rights of the investors. Yeah, so it's quite scary for me, like as an indigenous activist, and like what Ibu Mardiana said, she has experienced how the project that being led by government without involving the local communities will create the harms on the rights of the people. All right, now we come to the Q&A sections. Is there any question? You can raise your hand and ask your question, or maybe type your questions to the personal host.
Actually, there are some questions in the chat box.
In the comment chat box. I think one question here already being answered by Ibu Alma about the exact number of the food estate locations. It's still not clear.
I think with all the lack of transparency about this project, we as local people who have the lived experience of the adverse impacts of the similar project in the past need to be really critical and monitor the progress of the plan, because I would say this is a fuck up. I'm sorry my words, but there is a deliberate intention of the government to keep everything secret, not being informed to the public as it's supposed to be, and it shows the lack of integrity and accountability of the Indonesian government in implementing development project that is rhetorically stated as economic development for the people. So it's a big question that we need to still find the answer.
Right. We got one question here from Adi Nugroho Purbo. You can ask your question.
And which one?
Yeah, so he asked here, is there any mention of BRG's involvement in this
BRG.
project? Peatland Restoration
Badan Restorasi.
Agency. Ibu Ama maybe wants to answer?
Yeah. The only one time I heard that the head of the Peatland Restoration Agency, or BRG, Fuad Nasir, mentioned about that. He mentioned that in peatland area there are like cultivation zones that can be used for developing developing maybe rice or other species for cultivation. So after that, I haven't heard anything from BRG. Because in the peatland, as we know it from the map that I show you, actually there are zones that can be used for development, but there's very stringent, very strict rule that's only for cultivation area. Other than that, it should be used for protected zone or buffer zone.
All right. Well, actually, I read an articles like about 2 weeks ago that the head of the Peatland Restoration Agency mentions that turning the XMRP area as a food estate locations, it will revitalize the pit. Is it true or not? Established, and that's the result that we get now, and now when Indonesian government is going to establish this food estate project, I wonder what the scientists said about this, or I don't know, the government will really listen to the scientists from Kalimantan, especially, because of course people in Kalimantan, we have a lot of we have a lot of people in Kalimantan that have the knowledge about pit and about the land management. So I wonder if government listen to those people.
Actually,
Scientist yourself.
yes, scientists just actually show the facts. I know that many scientists already advise on not opening a new peatland area for cultivation of rice or other species that not suitable for the peatland. There are many of them already advise the government to be careful in doing this, and suggest that better to find other place that really guaranteed the successful of the project. Yeah, but at the end it depends on the decision maker, isn't it? They will they are the one who will take the decision on whether to go through the project or to change it. Yeah, because as like I said, this is a very quick project, which is beyond imagination of any scientist, I think, to start just within 2 months or something like that, because the area that they prepare also has problem with the as a result of the damage from the peatland, especially in the block A. This area can have like 2 or 3 times a year of flooding. So if they're not careful, a big stretch of rice field can be easily fail to harvest due to flooding. So they need to be really look at how to restore the hydrological systems in the area to prevent the flooding and to restore the collapse pit domes as well. Yeah, there's a need to be done with restoration actually. But sadly, yesterday I read the news that the BRG, the Peatland Restoration Agency, will not be continued. They finish by the end of this year. So it's very sad because in this fragile environment, the damage is already very big, and it caused a lot of problems for the local people, flooding and fire and haze, and for the biodiversity as well. It threatens a lot of threatened animals. So they need to think carefully for the long term, restoring the area while revitalize the livelihood of the people. So I think that's all that I can add.
Thank you. Thank you, Ibu Alma.
I think Ibu Alma is very interesting when we come across the news that the Peatland Restoration Agency is going to be dissolved by the end of this year, because it's actually a really staggering fact for me personally, because the roles and the influence of BRG in the context of peatland restoration is very, very significant. And it was just established in middle 2016, and it's less than 4 years, it's already being developed. Here, if we look at the pattern, we can clearly see that there is a crony capitalism pattern in this project. A crony capitalism pattern where there is a corporation brokerage system here. Government is acting as the mediator, yeah, through policy and regulations. A real example is that BRG is going to be dissolved, is potentially going to be dissolved, which actually which will likely open to allow to make ways for this food estate project to go ahead. Because if we look at the existing legal frameworks that we have here in Indonesia regarding peatland conservation, especially the government regulation number 57 year 2016, that peatland with a depth above 3 meters belong to the category of conservation peatland and have to be protected. And it also mentions that the Indonesian government doesn't allow any drainage through irrigation system on the peatlands. There shouldn't be any drainage activities undergone on the peatland ecosystems. So those regulations are actually clear, yeah, on the restrictions of converting peatlands to other land use. But it seems like the government is putting away those legal frameworks in order to make ways for this food estate by also dissolving BRG, which is really, really sad. And I don't know what's going to happen if BRG is no longer in function. They said ministries like the Ministry of Environment and Forestry will potentially take over the roles of BRG, but we don't know how to what extent the ministry can actually cover those workload as well.
Sure,
Just
please.
a little bit, because we have Ibu Mardiana here.
Yeah.
You know, like the question is asking about what do the government hears about the voice of scientists, right?
Right.
But we know that indigenous people is the real scientists in
Right.
Peatland, right? Because they have this wonderful knowledge about that, and I just really curious about that because, and then the successful farmer in peatlands, right? And then
Pelajari dulu dari warna air.
So we learn first and observe from the color of the water.
Kayu yang tumbuh
Observe all those things. Here's the rice.
agar padi itu bisa tumbuh.
so we grow the paddies without any fertilizers.
Dan kami kaget dengan kehadirannya Pak Prabowo untuk penanganan pembukaan ada perang atau bagaimana? Karena beliau adalah pertahanan keamanan, bukan pertahanan pangan.
Actually, we don't know about the food estate project, who will involve in this project, and then what kind of contribution that we can take here. And then we also very shocked when we knows that the Prabowo will lead these projects, because you know he is the Ministry of Defense in Indonesia, and then we afraid that he will gonna use the army, the military, for doing this project. And then
Yeah, I think that's fair, right? I mean, that's very normal that we as an local communities feeling a bit scared
Yeah.
about that. What's going on? Yeah, because the locals are not being informed about the project, and then suddenly they establish the project and put the Ministry of Defense and Security. I mean, there should be a transparency of every actions, because this what makes every government projects become problematic, because they never involve the indigenous communities and indigenous wisdom to lead the project. And this is a very very crucial point that we should learn from the local indigenous communities about the land management, because every soil in Indonesia, they have different kind of soils, right? I mean, in Java and Kalimantan, you cannot make the similar policy and the similar method. But yeah, that's the reality. And here Ibu Mardiana mentions about the importance of involving the locals.
Dan di sini
if I
juga
can, oh ya, sorry. Silakan, please.
dan di sini kami juga tahu bahwa Papua dan Kalimantan adalah paru-paru dunia. Pemerintah pun mengatakan stop pembabatan hutan, pengrusakan lingkungan, dan pembakaran lahan. Kami mengerti itu. Kami punya kearifan lokal. Kami juga takut dengan kerusakan lingkungan, dengan pembabatan hutan, dengan kebakaran hutan. Tetapi yang melakukannya itu siapa sekarang? Melakukan pembabatan hutan yang luar biasa dan pengerusakan lingkungan yang luar biasa itu siapa? Kami tahu akibat dari pembabatan hutan, penggudolan alam bumi. Kami tahu akibat dari pengerusakan lingkungan, wilayah resapan-resapan air. Kami tahu fungsi dari rawa, fungsi dari resapan air itu.
we know that the government had told us that Papua and Kalimantan is the lungs of the world, and the government already said that stop deforestation in this island. But the question is, who is the actors of this issue, the deforestations? Because we know that the effect of deforestation, we also know that the main role, the importance of protecting the ecosystem.
That's why we said indigenous communities are the guardians of the forest.
Yeah.
Pelindung hutan, ya Bu ya. Masyarakat adat adalah pelindung hutan.
Penjaga, pelindung, dan
Because
perawat hutan.
like Ibu Mardiana says, indigenous communities are the protectors the guardians, the keepers of the forest, of the environment, of the nature. So why don't we listen to them? And this is a message that we should spread globally to all the policymakers around the world. They have to listen to the indigenous communities and other projects. We are going to ask for the closing remarks because we have about 7 minutes left. But I just want to say about some news that I hear. Actually, not news, but this is a story because I feel this platform is very, very important to share about what's happening on the ground and the voices from the ground to the policymakers, to the media, and to people around the world. And this is not just a rumor actually, but this is what we hear from the locals, from the indigenous communities, because we get the stories from the locals. They say they have not been informed about this food estate. What is food estate? It sounds unfamiliar to the locals. And some head of the villages also mentions that they never get any socializations or explanations about the projects, while their village is actually included in the area that being established as the food estate. And then I heard another story from the village that also included in the location, that they are being forced to sell their land to the people that coming from outside Kalimantan, and that's for the personal possessions. It's not for this government's projects, but for personal possessions. Those people coming from outside Kalimantan following the transmigration project. So the locals being told by military to sell their land. Well, we do not know that this is true or not, but that's what we heard from the communities. So they kind of confused and scared, and they're trying to follow up that with the elders in the village, and they want to learn and observe about this project. I mean, with all these sweet promises from the food estate, they say like, okay, if we can join, why not? But they cannot get the transparency about the project. And instead they being taught to sell their land, and the process being facilitated by military. So it's quite scary for me. And Ibu Alma mentions about how this project actually just come up to the surface in 2 months and beyond the talk of every scientist. Meanwhile, is it really this project just being proposed this year because of the pandemic, or a few years ago, or like long time before this pandemic happened, these projections? Because it's not only about the environment, but that's also about the life, that's also about the climate, and this has become the problems, like that belong to all people, I think, when we talk about climate change. All right. I would like to give opportunities for every speaker to give the closing remarks. I will start with Ibu Alma.
Thank you. I just would like to really beg for the governments to reconsider again about the project, and to really careful in doing the assessment and the planning, and the restoration of the peatland should be the foremost of all, instead of changing the plan, because we know that peatland already damaged for more than 20 years, and it should need more time to restore it back, because peatland should stay as it is, because it is what it's designed to be, is store the water and the carbon for the planet. So we really need to respect this role of the peatland and restore it, and also respect the right of the indigenous people, the local people that already live there for thousands of years, living in the harmony with the peatland, and we need to learn from them and very, very careful not to use any kind of force or intimidation um, just to make the not well planned project to go through, because the cost is very big, not only for the local people that already experiencing the hard time in the last 20 years. We have this generation like Sumarni and Randi and Sinta. We don't want more haze, toxic haze for our generation. And also, uh, we, yeah, the land is not empty land. There are people, there are local indigenous people there that the government need to put first um, before this plan of developing the massive area of rice field or any cultivation that not suitable for the peatland, and also before bringing in um, thousands of new transmigrants to the area, because the environmental, social, and cultural impacts will be very, very big without careful assessment. Thank you.
Randy, please.
Uh, Thanks. I think I have a few points that I would like to say before we close this session. First and foremost, if the Indonesian governments want to revive, yeah, if the government is really talking about food security, they need to revive the agricultures in the thousands and thousands of villages across Indonesia. If they are really talking about food security and prosperity for the people, not the wealth for the corporations and political elites in Indonesia and beyond. Second of all, incentivize the farmers through technology and knowledge transfer. If the government really considers traditional communities and indigenous communities are backward, are incapable of modern agriculture that can yield more productivity, then incentivize them. Do not incentivize investors, but incentivize the farmers and the landers in order to work on our food security. Third of all, give back the lands that have been taken from the local people, especially people who are poor and people who are landless. And the young people in Kalimantan and also Indonesia and other places, please become more critical of our government's development agenda that has been very oppressive of the people, especially the poor in the villages. Make sure that we speak up and become the voices for the people that cannot speak for themselves. And last but not least, for my international network, my friends from media, from other organizations that also share the same vision, help us bring this issue to a global and wider audience so we can collectively pressure the government from continuing on this project. I think that's all from me. I would say no to food estate.
Thank you, Randy. Sumarni, please.
Okay, sorry. Um, this is a calling for everyone, especially young people, who say that they are the future generations and also the protectors, the guardians of this planet. Kalimantan, the lungs of the world, no sufferings for 23 years because of the fires and haze. And then if you don't cares about this issue, you don't cares about the already answered questions for the climate change. So that why I call you to support us in this movement to stop the food estate project in Kalimantan, and also to support indigenous community by immediately legislate the laws of indigenous community.
And we have the petitions.
Yeah, we have the petitions. Please sign the petitions. We will share the link for you. and you can read the background why we decided to do the petitions, and hopefully that we can win this.
Right. It's available on Twitter, on Facebook, and website of change.org, and also in the sentences, words like under the screen. Oke, Ibu Mardiana, silahkan berikan pernyataan sikapnya.
Di sini kami ingin menyampaikan kepada pemerintah di negara Republik Indonesia ini.
Here we want to state to the governments in Indonesia.
Stop pembakaran hutan dan pengrusakan lingkungan secara legal maupun ilegal.
Stop destroying the forest, whether it is in legal or illegal way.
Jangan ada lagi pembahasan tentang undang-undang mineral maupun cipta karya serta rencana untuk pembukaan persawahan di Kalimantan.
Please, the big mega rice farming in Central Kalimantan.
Pada saat bencana virus COVID ini, fokuslah mengatasi permasalahan virus ini. Karena ini mencabut nyawa, tidak pandang bulu dan pilih kasih.
In this pandemic situations, please just focus to help people and help the citizens of the country that are being affected, because people are threatened, their lives being threatened right now because of this COVID.
Kami masyarakat adat
We indigenous people,
meminta
we are asking and urging
kepada pemerintah pusat dan provinsi
to the central government in Jakarta and the local government in the province level,
evaluasi perizinan dan inventarisasi keuangan yang sudah dikeluarkan untuk pengelolaan persawahan dari provinsi sampai kabupaten maupun kecamatan dan desa.
please evaluate the
Evaluasi dan inventarisasi.
yeah, please evaluate, do evaluations and inventarization about this financial flows, whether it is in the district level, regency level, including the village level.
Sebelum melangkah,
Before you step in,
hormatilah.
please respect.
Kalau kalau minta dihormati, hormatilah
If you want to be respected, please respect first.
orang lain.
Respect the other first.
Jangan melangkah tanpa menghargai manusia. Manusiakanlah kami masyarakat, kami rakyat.
Don't step in without humanize the other people, because we are the local people, the first people of the Kalimantan.
Lakukan musyawarah mufakat
Please
dan
do,
dialog dengan masyarakat
please do
dari
discussion and dialogue with the communities
tingkat desa
from the
sampai ke
village
provinsi.
level to the province level.
Jangan asal melangkah dan jangan mengintimidasi kami lagi. Jangan mengkriminalisasi kami lagi.
Don't intimidate us and don't criminalize us anymore.
Jangan salahkan kami masyarakat adat jika kami bangkit melawan, karena kami demi perut dan demi kehidupan yang berkelanjutan, kami mempertahankan hak hidup kami atas tanah, hutan, dan lingkungan kami.
We refuse and we stand to protect our land, our water, and our home. Well, actually, I'm sorry, I cannot catch all the translation because I just feel in fire as well, because Ibu Mardiana just spit out the fires, the power of the indigenous woman leader. Please protect the forest. Hidup masyarakat adat.
Hidup.
Semangat,
Hidup
bangkit,
masyarakat
bersatu.
Fighting, united, rise up. All right. Before I do my closing remarks, I would like to invite one of my friends to have 3 seconds. He said he want to say hello from the Amazon. Please, Denise.
Hi, my friends. Nice to see you. That's
Hi,
fantastic.
nice to see you.
Hello from
It's
Kalimantan.
just like that you are talking about Amazonian problems. We have to defend our peatlands. The people has a lot of knowledge. Show what you know about the peatland management, and that's it. I always believe that people who has to restore any forest type, they have to know the ground. They have to take their shoes off. They have to sweat a lot. And most important, keep the mind open, trying to learn from the local communities, for men and women. They have a lot of knowledge. I am with you. You have to fight to protect the peatlands and the forests. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dennis. Yeah, thank you for your encouragement. Yeah, to us here. Thank you so much. Yeah, that's the greetings from the Amazon peatland. All right, so we are now at the end of this webinar. Yeah, I really hope to meet everyone soon after this, because we are going to have more webinar, because there will be a series. We know that this project is planned to be implemented in October this year, so yeah, we still have time, but we are in urgency. I mean, like, keep pushing this, keep raising the voices from the ground up, and keep advocating for what really matters. So I would like to thank everyone that joining this webinar via Zoom conference and also via live streaming. Thank you so much for those who follow this webinar from Indonesia, from different provinces, from Sabang to Merauke, and also to those who joining us from UK, from US, from Spain, Germany, Australia, Peru, and India, and Brunei also.
Yeah, we have Brunei.
So thank you
Germany
so much.
also. Yeah, please follow Youth Act, yeah.
Yeah.
We will have the
Let's
talks with
fight
the
united together.
young leaders. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Ibu Mardiana. Thank you, thank you, Sinta. Thank you, Sumani.
Terima kasih.
Oh, jangan terlalu